All right, a very happy Thursday out there. Hopefully everyone is doing well. We are going to do a little bit of a Giannis video here. Jamal Collier, Tim Bontemps, and myself have on ESPN.com what I am basically calling it the future of Giannis. It's an FAQ where we look at everything from his current contract, his extension eligible starting on Friday, September 22nd. What are the options for him now? What are the options next offseason? Where this Milwaukee roster is right now. So I figured we would have a video that will complement the article that's on ESPN.com. It will be up there for, I'm sure, for the next few days here. You're probably thinking, oh my God, he's got 3 years left in his contract. Why are we worrying about Giannis in the future now? Typical ESPN, trying to draw headlines. And listen, you have a better chance of it snowing in Southwest Florida than Giannis signing the 3-year, $169 million extension. However, we have to lay out all the particulars when it comes to the extension and all these recent comments, whether it's been on multiple different podcasts saying he's not going to sign the extension. It's more of a business decision, but the roster has to be championship worthy for me to make a full commitment. So with that comes the article here. Listen, we could have written a 700-word article based on the extension, why he's not going to sign it, and what's going to happen next year. But no, we've turned it into 2,000 words, and we're going to go into it a little bit here. So he signed a Supermax extension in December of 2020. 5 years, $228 million. The fifth year is a player option. When you look at the contract right now, it is less than a max contract. And why is because when COVID hit, the CBA basically flatlined for a period of a few years, and then we only saw a small bump, and that's why this Giannis number right now is roughly, he's at $45.6 million this year. That's 33.55% of the salary cap. Max for a hit player like him is 35%. That's why you see him playing at a below max number. He's got 45.6, 48.8, 51.9. That's a player option. He has up until October 23rd to sign a 3-year, $169 million extension. We're hearing all different numbers, whether it be 173. Remember, the numbers are fluid based on what the salary cap is going to be in 2025-26. The extension for 3 for 169, and it's funny, when I sent this article to our group of ESPN reporters, I said, well, really, it's only $117 million in new money. And my good friend Mark Spears said, only? And I said to him, Mark, you've been around this long enough. We live in a fantasy, NBA players live in a fantasy world when it comes to player salaries. They are the 1%. It is not the same as me or you or a policeman or a fireman or a teacher out there. We have to look at it in a different perspective. And that's how I have to look at it when I'm looking at Giannis. So if he did sign that extension, basically that $51.9 million player option is now being replaced with a salary roughly north of $52 million. That's why it's only $117 million in years. That's why he is not going to sign this extension. It doesn't make sense. It makes more sense for him to play out the year. Then he becomes extension eligible next July. He would have a full year. So there's no October 23rd date because he has a player option in that last year. A person who has 2 years left on his contract with a player option or team option has until June 30th. Remember, the league does not look at that as a year. Technically, he would be on a 1-year contract here. And then he would be eligible to sign for 4 years, roughly $234 million. And it could increase to $258 million based on where the cap is. So from a pure business perspective, it makes zero sense unless Giannis knows that his knee is not in good shape and he wants an extra $117 million in guaranteed money. From a pure business perspective, okay? So we talked about next offseason, okay? And listen, also, if he doesn't sign the extension, that doesn't sound the bells. It does. There's not a 5-alarm fire now. Milwaukee's got to trade him. He hasn't signed it. It is a pure business decision. Now, that's certainly different next offseason when he is eligible to sign that 4 for $234. What happens if he says, I'm not going to sign it, I'm going to play out the season? We get to the offseason of 2025. That is a different story, and that's something for Milwaukee to deal with a year from now as far as figuring out what they should do with Giannis here. He came out, he talked to the New York Times, he said next summer would make more sense for both parties. But here's where things really get interesting, and there he's basically kind of, more than giving us breadcrumbs, even then, I don't know, Antetokounmpo said about signing an extension. I would not be the best version of myself if I didn't know that everybody's on the same page, everybody's going for a championship, everyone's going to sacrifice time away from the family. Now, here's my issue with Giannis. From what I know is Milwaukee's paid the luxury tax. I believe they're a repeater tax team. They just signed Chris Middleton for $100 million and Brook Lopez for $50 million. And they basically had Giannis pick who his next coach wanted to be. John Horst has basically tried to turn over this team, whether it be the Jay Crowder trade or the Drew Holiday trade. It's not like they've just sat on their hands since they won, and they did win a championship also. And they were the number 1 seed going into last year's playoffs before Giannis got hurt in game 1. And you had 2 games where you blew leads, and Giannis wasn't great. So I think for Giannis, take a back seat and put it all into the big picture here. And I know what I'm about to say is probably going to ruffle feathers in Milwaukee or maybe even people around the league. And I know Giannis earned 2 MVPs, and he's Defensive Player of the Year, and he's all the things. But 4 minutes left in the game, I can name 10 players I would want on a court besides Giannis. Clutch time, give me Durant, give me Jokic, give me Booker, give me Curry, give me LeBron, and I think we can add another 5 there. Give me Kyrie, give me Luka. 4 minutes left in the game, there's 10 players there. So Giannis has got to get better also here. And I know this Milwaukee front office has basically tried to turn over the roster to put a championship roster on the court here. Now, who is the X factor to Giannis? The X factor is Drew Holiday. Last year of his contract, he's got a player option for next year. He is extension eligible February 22nd. Circle the date. What happens with Drew Holiday, from my perspective, determines with what happens to Giannis. If Drew Holiday does not sign an extension or does not like what's being offered and enters free agency next year and signs with a team with cap space, let's say, hypothetically, Philadelphia, for example, I would be very, very, very concerned if I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fans about the possibility of losing Giannis. Here's the other thing. If you sign Drew Holiday to an extension, and we're going to pull up his number, 4 for $223, you are now paying Drew Holiday $62 million at the ripe age of 37 in 2027-28. If you don't sign Drew Holiday to an extension, you are basically on the same financial playing field as every team that has cap space next offseason because of the over 38 rule. You can offer Drew Holiday a 4-year contract. Philadelphia can offer Drew Holiday a 4-year contract. It's about $9 million and less in money. If you lose Drew Holiday, you are still over the salary cap. You will have the $12.9 million non-tax mid-level exception to replace. So circle February 22nd. That is Drew Holiday. And as I said, he is the X factor here. we raised the question, how much longer can this team be a championship contender? 271 games since 18-19, the most in that span here. But this roster is getting older. Middleton, we'll see how he bounces back from injury. Lopez, a year older. There's not a single player on their contract for the 2025-6 season. There's certainly Antetokounmpo, Middleton, Portis, Connaughton have player options for that year here. Lopez is 35, Holiday is 33, Middleton is 32. You've traded a lot of draft picks. You're trying to build it back with youth. You owe draft picks from the Holiday trade. You owe a 25 and 27 first to New Orleans. 25 potentially can go to New York. New Orleans has swap rights in 24 and 26. You can only trade a 2029 or 2030. You have 1 second round pick in 2024. That's from Indiana. The new CBA complicates things. You are a second apron team this year. You did not have the you did not have the tax mid-level. You bring back Holiday next year. You're also a second apron team likely. You're not going to have the tax mid-level. You won't have cash to send in a trade. So this year is, I'm going to say, this is make or break year for the Milwaukee Bucks. And then throw in also, you have a new head coach who's been a lifelong assistant in Toronto and in Chicago, and Adrian Griffin, who now moves over 1 seat to the hot seat. So what happens? You get off to a 5-7 start or a 5-8 start here. You're going to have to take a big picture approach as far as where this roster is. So I don't see anything happen with Giannis this season at all. I see the extension date going by on October 23rd. I see him playing out the season. And then we get to next year when he's extension eligible once again for 230 to 250, somewhere in that range. What happens in Milwaukee this year? What happens with Holiday? Certainly will make a big decision when it comes to Giannis. Seismic. We will, and here's the other thing too. We never see franchise players hit free agency. We saw it in 2019 with Durant, with Golden State coming off the Achilles. We saw it with Kawhi in 2019 in Toronto, signs with the Clippers here. Players of his status. And this is going to come down to Milwaukee saying, is it better off for us just playing off the year? It's almost like what the Angels went through with Shohei Ohtani. Is it better off playing out the year with the sake of trying to win a championship, although this Milwaukee roster is a lot better than the Angels were, and then deal with it in the offseason of 2024? In the offseason of 2025 when Giannis could potentially become a free agent with that player option here. So there are big questions out there. I wouldn't get caught up as far as him not signing this extension, but as I said, the article lays out everything you need to know about Giannis Antetokounmpo. Have a great day.